So firstly, welcome. Told you what props we needed, which is just a block, and then I forgot get my own one out. We're going to sit here for a few minutes, just settle ourselves and breathe. As ever, we're going to start with yin practice. We've got a little bit of flow this evening, working our way through some warriors. Hopefully that will feel nice and juicy after stretching through that yin beginning. Sitting tall, easy posture. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with legs crossed in this way. You could cross the ankles as long as it feels easy in the groins. What's more important, more significant to us is bringing the pelvis into alignment. For most of us, that will mean that we need to tilt it forwards a little bit, just curl it in a fraction, and then you start to find that the spine sits upright a little more easily. And it uses less of the big movement muscles in your back to hold yourself up, and starts to work in the more small intrinsic muscles that connect each of the vertebrae together, accumulated over the length of the spine, which gives us a sense of balance. So we're looking to find that position as best we can. For some of us, that might mean that we need to actually sit on our knees or sit with the legs out in front in some way. Adapt the pose to your needs. And then with that extra space, you can breathe really low down in the belly, as so the belly expands as the diaphragm moves around underneath you. Imagine that you're trying to fill a glass and you put the tap on. And it's got a small flow of water, and you put it underneath, and the glass fills very evenly because you don't touch the flow and adjust the tap pressure. That's what we're looking for in our breath. So that smooth raise of filling the lungs. Now, as with a glass of water, if you fill it to the very top, it becomes a bit tricky. We spill it. If we do the same with our lungs, it starts to introduce stress and tension, just as it does about trying to hold that glass still. So we can either breathe in quickly or fill completely to the top. Smooth, stop a little short, give yourself a margin of space that you can work within. For some of us, closing the eyes works well. It allows us to focus more on the breath and settle the mind and heart. And we'll allow ourselves to unpeel the legs. You might need to stretch them out a little bit. It can be quite daunting having the legs tucked under. We'll take the knees back, move gently down into Sphinx pose. So we'll come onto our bellies. Allow the feet to be as wide as the mat. And bring your elbows about shoulder distance apart, directly underneath your shoulders. Then you can actually kind of relax your spine and your shoulders. So your belly will start to become more in contact with the floor as your spine relaxes. And you might find that your shoulders start to sort of move up towards your ears a little as well. Head position, really of choice. Some people like to look forwards. Some people like to look to the ground. So whatever feels good in your neck. Get our way down completely onto our chest. We're going to bring the hands underneath the chin or the forehead. And we'll bring the feet back onto the center line momentarily. And then draw the right knee out to approximately 90 degrees to the body. Allow the shin to follow the line of the mat. So that creates the second 90-degree angle in the knee, calf to thigh. And we'll just turn the head lightly in the direction of the right side as well. And try and let that right hip bone sink down to the floor. Relax both legs as much as you possibly can. It's going to be easier in the long leg that's flat to the ground, a little more challenging to the side leg. Also try and relax your shoulders. Allow yourself to feel that you can sink into your mat a little bit as you exhale. Now slowly bring the heel back on to the mat. Slide the leg out. Make knot. We haven't forgotten the opposite side. We're just going to move and change direction a little bit. The hands to the bottom of the ribs and peel away from the floor. Going to bring the knees together. Take the feet wide. Take my flat block. Place that just behind, so that as my sitting bones come down, they're able to rest on something. So hopefully you can see that the toes are pointing back. The thighs roll in a little bit so the knees touch. It does take a little time for the back of the calves and the thighs to free up. If you kind of prod your fingers into the side of your calf, they'll lightly feel very strong and tight. So we're using those muscle tightness to stretch the tendons and ligaments in the shin bone and across the thigh. It's fairly easy to feel the opening up of the knees as well. We're not staying there for too long, literally just a minute. And Then I'm going to bring the feet together, take the knees wide, bring the block towards the front of the mat. As I come down, allow myself to rest my forehead gently on top of the block. And I'm kind of cupping my hands around the block as well, just limiting how far forward my arms are stretching forwards. And let the shoulders really relax down as well as the rest of my body. Then we're only going to be here for a short amount of time. I'm trying to get the feeling of letting my spine sink down to the floor. It's a little bit rounded to start with. You might need to move the block around if like you're wearing glasses. Just to find that good place. And again, as your body kind of opens up, you'll notice that you can move the block around and get a little longer in the spine. Take a little breath from there. Lift back up onto the floors. And move the block again to the front of the mat. Take Sphinx pose again. Now you could modify that into seals pose by allowing the elbows to lift off the ground. You'll get much more stretch into the shoulders. It'll lift up around the ears a lot more, push back. It'll also deepen the compression in the spine. Now, if you are not able to sit here comfortably, if it feels too much in the spine or nerves tingling or aching, if there's any pains, then definitely come back down, because this is restorative yoga in its truest sense. We're trying to encourage a different approach into the body, which is very mindful and gentle. So just working too hard kind of is counterintuitive, really. Now, some people that have got more mobility, more openness in their spine could walk their hands in closer than me. This is enough for me to lift the shoulders back and up and get that compression in the spine and still be able to breathe easily. Here, I'm going to let myself come back down onto the elbows very gently, a little bit of control. So using the tummy muscles and back muscles to release myself down. Bring the feet back onto the center line. Slowly take the left knee out to the side, those 90-degree bends that we had before. Now, normally you would turn the head towards the left, relax the shoulders down. I need to keep my eyes on the clock. So I'm going to look the opposite way to the way I've suggested. That is not the most comfortable way of treating your neck. If you can't take your chin towards the left side, then again, allow yourself to bring your hands underneath your chin or use that block underneath your forehead, so your eyes are looking down towards the ground. Again, we'll bring the leg back on. Nice and easy. Wiggle out the hips a little from side to side. Bring the hands again underneath the body. Press away from the floor. We're going to come up into butterfly pose. So I'm going to sit back a little bit onto the heels. Just take the block behind and then sit on that. So a little bit lifted. And bring the soles of the feet together, but I'm not going to bring them all the way in towards the body. I'm going to let them move out a comfortable distance so that when your feet begin to pull apart, that's where you want to kind of just move your legs half an inch back in so your feet can stay together easily and your knees are out to the side, obviously. Wriggling onto the front edge of the sitting bones. And then we're going to let the chin drop, and rather than excessively leaning forwards, I want to allow the spine to decompress. So get to that sort of teenage slouch. And with control, allow the pelvis that we spoke of before tilt backwards. So now the pelvis is going that way, away from it. The belly's drawn in. And then once that starts to feel like it's got as far as it can, we'll let the chin drop and start to round into the top part of my back a little bit more. The hands just sit here and relax down. And we can feel the body still opening gently. The feet have started to open up again. So bring the heels back in a little closer. Now the legs will move out a little bit further to the side. Make it a little rounder. And for every extra millimeter of rounding I get, my leg seems to open up. And I can bring the feet closer to the body. And now the little toes are touching, but the sort of the ball joint of the feet starting to move apart naturally. I'm starting to sink forwards a little bit further, again, as the knees are out wide. And then, since my body feels like it's moved again, I'm going to bring the feet a little bit closer again. Changing the shape of the spine, changing the tilt of the pelvis, often means that I felt quite a lot of changes happening in the spine as I come down. But there is a general sense of opening of the back muscles down the spine. The fascia from the crown of your head through your tailbone and down your legs, starting to get a bit of a stretch. We'll take a breath, use the fingers on the floor and let ourselves lift back up. So the ending position, very different to the beginning. The legs have moved in significantly from there where we started. Now take the legs out wide as you comfortably can. Now, if you're like me and you've got a hard floor and you don't like the hard floor, then turn your seat to the side edge so your heels can still be on the mat. Still going to take a forward fold, but this time it's going to be more of a hinge from the hips. So I'm going to allow the spine to stay long for a little longer into the pose. And allow the hands to walk forwards a little bit. Now I'm starting with the toes pointing towards the sky. The legs are more or less straight. They've got a little bit of bend in here, but not excessive. And then I'm going to start to let the more of the sort of upper back round and keep dropping. I can feel that around the back of the knees. Feel that along the spine. Pressing the internal organs. The breath is a little bit more into the back of the ribs. Trying to relax the shoulders down. Breathing easy. And with a glass of water, just filling up slowly. So to lift slowly back up. Draw the legs back in. Now we're going to come down to the ground. We're going to use the block towards the back of the mat. It's called a cat's tail, this pose. So we're going to roll down to the floor. I can comfortably bring my chin in towards my chest, hands behind, and use my shoulders and abdominal muscles and spine to ease myself down to the floor. But if you need to navigate to the ground in a different way, by all means do. We're going to allow ourselves to ease the spine down to the floor and bring the block underneath the back of the head. And take the arms out in line with the shoulders. I'm going to take a little breath and shimmy the hips as far as I comfortably can over towards the right side of the mat and lengthen the left leg out. And just a moment, place the right foot on top of the left thigh and then begin to slowly roll the legs over towards the left. And try to keep the shoulders on the ground. So I need to wriggle the hips around a little more underneath me. Once I've gone as far as I comfortably can, I'm going to add a little bit more weight into the twist by extending the foot away from the thigh and out towards the left side of the mat. You're going to take the left hand and just place it on top of the thigh. Draw the leg down a little further. Attempting to keep shoulders on the ground. And take a few breaths here. Body to acclimatize. The bottom leg is pretty much straight down the middle line of the mat. Breath in. And then I'm going to start to take hold of the cat's tail. So I'm going to bend the left leg, which is the one on the bottom of you at the moment, and use your toes to walk your foot gently towards your own buttock. And then slide your right hand down, find your foot, hopefully, and you're going to initially try and draw the heel in towards the buttock and the knee on the bottom leg down towards the ground and have the shoulders pretty much flat to the ground. Now, if you're able to access the rear foot very easily, you could start to draw your hand a little more out towards the right side. And now the bottom leg is no longer running down the center line of the mat. The knee is moving over towards the right side. You might be able to do that a couple of times and just start to open out the legs a little more and move around. Hips take a couple of wriggles. Normally that does release that way. Roll the spine very gently back into the center line of the mat. I'm going to bring the heels towards the body, knees high, let the knees rock in. Move the hips this time to the left side. The right leg out down the mat. Put the arms out in line with the chest. Left foot comes on top of that right thigh. Have to roll the hips over. Minor adjustments as I go. Extend the foot away from the thigh. The right hand on top of the left leg. Just move it down a little bit. And stay here for a few breaths. And we'll start to use the right foot, bending the right knee, walking the foot towards your bottom, and then just using the left hand down to take hold of the foot. And if you find yourself in a different position, one side to the other, that's not a problem. Now, for those that find it incredibly easy to use the left hand to draw the right foot a little more with the left side, you can do, but not at the expense of lifting the shoulders further away from the ground. So whatever position you were in,
there. And draw both knees towards the body onto the side of the mat. Use the hands, lift gently away from the floor. And take the block, bring myself up onto my knees. The block is about halfway down the mat. You can take a little breath. I'm going to nudge the block a little over to the left side and spin the left foot out to the side as I bring the right foot forwards. I'm going to sit gently back and hopefully get my sitting bones onto that flat block. Maybe you need to turn it the opposite way around. But in this position, you want to ideally have your heel of your left foot to the outside of the hip, this knee on the floor pointing forwards. Now I'm going to allow myself to extend the right leg out and ease my hands back. Allow the pelvis to tilt with me. So I'm going to lift, I'm going to press into the heel of the right foot. Just a little lift off of the cheekbones so I can tuck the tailbone underneath to get off of that kind of lip that we have back there. And then if you're able to, you're going to start to bend your elbows. Keep the chin in towards your chest. And then you might be able to get one elbow to the ground gently. And see if you can roll the other arm down gently as well, with as much control and grace you can muster. Now we want to have the bent knee on the ground. If it's lifted off, then you need to lift your body up a little bit further. And to that end, either having a couple of more blocks under the elbows or a bolster behind you to support you might be useful. But if you're able to get down in this low position with just one prop, it seems very much simple. You'll feel a big stretch in your thigh muscles. Again, we're working into the territory of that knee, but also up into the hip flexor, which is why we want that knee down on the floor. Let the pelvis sink back and away and lengthen the space between the top of the hip and the top of the thigh. Make that feel like it's getting a little bit longer as we sink in. As that opening happens in that very top of the thigh, as I explained, the belly of the thigh will feel like it's getting a very big stretch. Now again, I elect to keep the chin towards the chest. And that's just a little bit safer on the nerves. If you drop the head back a long way, then in this position, you'd be sort of pressing the nerves a little bit too much. If you're able to get all the way to the floor and move the block out from underneath you, you can do. And then again, your head would be in line with your body on the floor. Okay, we're going to start to lift out of that. So we're going to try and come out the same way. I'm going to press the hands into the floor, just put them behind a little bit. Allow myself to lift up slowly using the arms. Bring the right foot in. Push forwards on the fingertips. Move the block over a little bit. I'm going to stretch that left leg out. Say hello, see how it feels. That was an immensely big stretch through that leg. And you just need a few seconds to let the blood flow catch back up with itself. And then knee slightly in, heel slightly out. Left foot comes forward. We use the fingers to ease ourselves onto the block. Where possible, we can get 2 sitting bones on the block. That would be great. We'll lengthen the left leg out. Just make sure this knee is pointing forwards. As you can see, the heels to the outside of the thigh. Just aligning the sitting bones up a little more. And then begin to take that back. Now again, I'm going to press into the heel of the extended leg and just tuck the tailbone forwards a little bit to get off of the sitting bones, more onto the back edge, away from that coccyx. And then we'll start to come down again. So just easing our way down, taking our time, adjusting the pelvis around as we need to. And try and relax the shoulders. And we'll start to lift from there. So again, just a little lift, hands behind, push away from the ground, ease our way back up gently, bring the leg back in, forwards. I suppose to stretch gently out through that leg. So we're going to come into our final yin pose this evening, which is going to be a squat. I'm going to take the block across the back of the feet here and attempt to bring the block underneath the heels. So it's on the corner edges of the block, and then turn the toes out. So sit down. Now, if you don't feel comfortable, if you feel like your body's going to spring open from beneath you and shoot you catapulting back, then lean forwards a little bit. Keep your fingers on the ground. Give yourself a little bit of sense of safety. If you're able to bring your arms directly on top of the knees, you can. And then a little bit like we worked at the beginning of the class on allowing the spine to gently lengthen itself up. So you're going to draw your tummy muscles in a little bit. Allow yourself to sit a little bit higher. So it's a very small movement, sort of fractions of a millimeter at a time. Just to get into a slightly higher position, and you'll kind of find your own balance point. If you overcook it, you just move back in a little bit. That balance point does change with your breath. Then consider the head to be in alignment with the spine, so not dropping the head down or looking towards the sky obsessively. And see if you can relax the shoulders down. And before you know it, it's time to lift up. So bring the hands, all of us, towards the front of the mat. Move the block out to the side. And then we're just going to stand up. Hopefully the knees work still. I'll allow you to do so. Come into the front of the mat. Take a little breath. Now I'm going to turn to my right side, but whichever way is easiest for you to see the screen. And we'll take the feet out nice and wide. So I'm going to wiggle the feet out wider and wider and wider until we get to a comfortable distance. And then allow myself to slowly take the arms out in line with the shoulders. We'll take a breath and we'll turn the front foot all the way onto the center line. And then the back heel turns out a little bit as well. So the hips are now more diagonal rather than facing the long side of the mat. We'll slowly sink into the front knee until it feels like it's over my ankle. Now, if you're looking towards the front of your hand, your peripheral vision, you should be able to see that, but you can always have a cheeky little look. After all, once you've arrived, we're then going to lengthen out slowly into an extended side angle, bring the forearm down, and start to lift the top arm up towards the sky. We'll slowly lengthen it out towards the front of the mat, so the arm comes close to the ear. And then lift our way back up, bringing the hand towards the back of the mat, coming back into Warrior Two. We're slowly going to straighten the front leg, bring the hands in towards the heart, turn the toes towards the long side of the mat, and then turn your back foot away from you, center line of the mat, and the back heel drops away from you. Hands come out in line with the shoulder. You sink into the new front knee. Lengthen out slowly. Bring the forearm down. Keep the chest nice and open and lifting. Extend the arm up and over as we exhale. And we'll bring it back into Warrior Two. Straighten the front leg. Turn the toes to the long side of the mat. And the hands coming towards the heart. Turn the front foot on the center line again. The back heel turns in. As you sink into the knee, take the arms out into our Warrior Two. Extend out on an exhale. To the side, top arm lifts, chest is open to that long side of the mat. We'll bring a hand along to this line from fingertip, shoulder, hips to heel. Come back into our Warrior Two. Straighten the front leg. Turn the toes towards the long side of the mat. Bring the hands in towards the heart. Turn the toes the opposite way. Sink into the new front knee. Hands open up into Warrior Two. Use the exhale to lengthen out. Forearm comes down. Long breath in. With that arm up towards the sky and out towards the end of the mat. Ease your way back into your Warrior Two. Hands in towards your heart. Toes in towards the center line. Turn the toes towards the front of the mat. The back heel turns in. You open into your Warrior Two. Extend out again. Forearm lifts. And stretch out. Inhale it back up. Bring your hands into the heart. Straightening the front leg. We turn the toes again. Toes turn to the end of the mat. You sink into the knee. You take the hands out. Extend forwards. Try and keep a little bit of weight always in your back foot, pressing down, lifting up towards the end of the mat. And slowly bring ourselves back up. Turn the toes towards the long side this time. Put a little bit of a bend into the knees. Bringing the hands onto the hips. Want the thumbs towards the spine, elbows drawn back. The hinge from the hips, keeping that softness in the knee. And the spine is flat, hinging over the hips. We come halfway and then release your fingertips down to the floor underneath your shoulders. Allow yourself to take the feet a little wider if if there's any space, but always have the toes in and the heels out. Take a little breath from there. Allow yourself to hinge from the hips down to the ground. As you arrive, press your feet into the floor, draw your tummy muscles in. You get a sense of lifting your hips towards the sky. Relaxing your spine over your hips. Your head gets closer to the floor the more you try to lift your hips towards the sky. Now we'll start to lift back up. Put that little bend in the knees again. Bring the hands around the back. Interlace your fingers. Allow yourself to fold down again. This time keeping the hands together, they're going to slowly drop over your head towards the long side of the mat. Once you've gone as far as they can, allow yourself to press your feet down to the floor. Lift your hips to open those legs back out again. Nice and slowly. And keep the shoulders away from the ears. They'll tend to drop in a little bit and it gets congested. Now release the hands back down to the floor. Allow yourself to lift up halfway. Walk your fingers gently around towards the front end of your mat, turning the toes with you. Stepping back into down dog. A little bit of a kerfuffle, moving around. Making any adjustments that you need to. And flat to the ground. Lift the hips high. We're going to see if we can stay in the down dog position, but walk the feet forwards enough to get the heels to the ground, but with straight legs. So for all of us, that's going to need a little bit of adjustments. You might need to walk the feet forwards. You might want to be walking the hands back. We're getting to that point. We're not pressing the heels down. They've just arrived. And press the hips back and up. Last breath in. And then come forwards a little bit into an almost plank. Bring the knees down to the ground. We'll spin the feet out to the side one time. Allow ourselves to bring the feet towards the front of the mat. We're going back down to the ground again, so hands behind or rolling onto your shoulders, keeping your chin towards your chest if you choose the method I use. Again, you can either leave the block to the side or bring it behind the back of your head. Some people like to do twists with their spine flat to the ground. I have to look towards the clock. I find it easier if I'm already a little bit higher. To be honest, that's why I use the block. Otherwise, if I was a student, I would be flat to the ground. Now, I'm going to take the feet wide, but the knees high, and the feet are still close in towards the body. The knees are rocking towards the center line. I'm just going to give them half a minute to let the knees drop in towards the center line. So I'm going to see if I can relax the groins and the hips and let the legs link together. Okay, take a little breath. Allow both legs to roll gently out towards the right side. We're going to slide onto the edge of the foot, so it stays pretty much the same place in the mat. The top leg's going to float wherever it does. If it goes to the ground, great. But if it doesn't reach there, that's okay. We're going to try to move the bottom leg down towards the floor. We're just starting to feel the outer hip muscles work to pull down. And then I'll release and let the legs come back up again. And make sure the feet are still as wide as the mat. And then let the legs go down to the opposite sides. And try and relax the top leg. And begin to make an effort to pull the bottom thigh down towards the floor. Come back into the center. Spine. Use the toes to gently walk the feet towards the front of the mat. And when it gets impossible to do that further, slide the heels very slowly towards the corners of the edge of the mat. And then in my case, they're actually going to slide off. And try and do that as slowly as we can, keeping the heels in contact. I appreciate with a sticky mat, the last thing it's easy to do is slide your heels anyway. The idea is to keep the spine flat to the floor rather than adding tension into it. So wriggle the shoulders a little bit, wriggle out through the hips, the fingers and the toes. I'll slide the hands alongside the body. I'm going to bring my right hand onto the belly below my belly button, and the left hand up onto the belly above. So the idea is that I can feel the breath through one hand and the heart through the other. Now, if you're not able to do that and keep your elbows on the ground easily, because the limbs are a little shorter than mine, then just allow the hands to be by the side of your body where it feels relaxed. If you're long of limb, you'll probably be able to do this with comfort. So that's the key word really for whatever position you finally elect to use. And now we'll just give ourselves about 5 minutes of stillness and silence. I'll tell you when it's time to come back out of this. The last thing I'll ask you to do is make sure your eyes are closed gently and that your jaw is relaxed and soft. Too gently. Wiggle the fingers and toes. Still softly shut. Now the wrists and ankles to begin to move as you breathe a little deeper and bring your nervous system, your breath, and your mind all back together. And take a longer breath. Allow yourself to recognize where you need to stretch into. Follow your instincts. Listen to your body. See what it needs. And we're going to slowly slide one heel at a time in towards the body so we can draw the foot again along the mat until it's easy to lift a knee at a time towards you. So take your hands either on top of your knees or onto your shins. And just allow yourself to ease the knees in towards your body. You might want to rock a little bit or even stir the hips gently. Whatever it is, be very gentle, smooth, and compassionate to the body that you have. Take a final breath and roll gently onto the right side. We're going to roll completely, so we're going to keep the knees in towards the body. Come down with control. Allow the chest to turn towards the ground. And then use your hands to press away from the floor as you exhale. So you roll as smoothly away from the ground as you possibly can. Cross the legs over, sit high. Comfortable position for you to sit in. And bring your hands towards your heart. Close your eyes. We can take another long breath in. And slowly start to exhale, letting the head drop. And finding the belly drawn to the spine, sinking to a gentle bow. And then as breath comes back into the body, let it lift your spine for you. Find your head, your eyes open. Namaste. Thank you for joining me this evening. Hope you enjoyed our little stretch into the world of yin. And we shall see you again on the mat soon.